Hello, techies. Welcome to the Tech Ties Africa podcast, where we'll bring you the latest stories on tech and startups in Africa. Catch us every Thursday at 10 a.m. WAT on techtiesafrica.podbean.com. Let us know what you think by giving us feedback in the comments or on our socials. Now, on with the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Tech Ties Africa podcast. My name is Kelvin, talking from Nigeria. How is it at your end, Karen?
Hi everyone, this is Karen Maina, and in Nakuru, Kenya, we are experiencing a very warm morning. I'm looking forward to unpacking some interesting topics that we have today, from really fast-growing businesses across the country to a curious no-show in stablecoins rollout for some countries that I didn't expect would be out. So looking forward to it. Let's plug in.
All right. So for today, we have a number of developments in Africa, starting with Africa's fastest growing companies in 2025. The Financial Times have put out a list of 130 businesses that are the fastest growing in Africa. I guess the thing that jumps out of the page is out of the 130, 79 are from two countries, so South Africa and Nigeria. Outside of that, the other countries are Kenya and Egypt dominates most of this list, make up, I think, about 90% of this list. So it proves the point of the Big Four, but it also emphasizes the other points that it's difficult for companies from other countries to break through in terms of the spread when you talk about expanding into other African countries and really gaining significant traction. It seems to be hard from other countries in Africa. So the Big Four continues to dominate, and this is the headline of this story.
I was really disappointed, to be honest with you. When I look at, for example, the main contenders from Nigeria, you're seeing a lot of startups, you're seeing a lot of people that are solving current problems, right? Now, when I look at Kenya, for example, the first company that shows up for Kenya is at number 41, and it's Serena Hotels. And it's like, yeah, really? I don't know. It was a bit of okay, maybe as a country, we still have a lot of work to do for our startups and guys that are creating solutions for Africa, right? I was really interested, though, to see that there's a lot of agricultural companies that are on that list from Kenya. So that was a good sign for me. But I also think that you have made a very important point, and that is that it is showing a real difficulty for smaller countries in Africa to make an impact in the continent as a whole. I'm seeing Zambia is coming up and is really trying, and I think we have talked about Zambia a couple of times within this podcast. So that's a good thing to see, because we're seeing a country that is rising up and taking good strides. We've also seen Uganda and Tanzania coming up. We've seen Ghana a lot. But I'm always wondering, where are other countries? Where is Swaziland? Where is Ethiopia? Where is Somalia? Where is Sudan, South Sudan, Eritrea, Djibouti? These are countries that are also important. And so we're seeing something that we've been discussing a lot on the podcast, and that is, how do we create policies that allow better trade amongst countries so that we can see other countries following suit at a faster rate? Because I think that will then create a lot more economic growth. I was recently listening to something, and it's a TikTok page of this guy who goes around asking billionaires how they got rich and stuff like that. And so he asked this guy, he's an investor, and he asked him, so what do you think is a good industry for people to invest in right now? And that guy said, I'll change your thinking from industry to continent. And I think right now everyone needs to be investing in Africa. Why? Because we have the highest growing population rate, and our population is very, very young. So in the future, buying power and HR resources will come from Africa, right? And if we want to be a contender as Africa, then we have to make sure that we are growing as a whole. So that is definitely something that comes to mind. How can we hold the hands of the other countries that are in this continent so that we ensure that as Africa is the future, we get to decide how we grow it as opposed to allowing other people to come in and dictate how that happens. And if we are not careful, that's what will happen. We will see Western countries own Africa as opposed to Africans owning Africa and growing as a continent. That's where my mind goes when I look at this. Also, wanting to see more startups by Africans, not necessarily global companies within the continent that are doing well.
Yeah, you make really solid points there. Africans building for Africa, and the funny thing with a lot of the successful, I guess, companies in Africa or startups in Africa, especially the unicorns, you notice that a lot of them are from the big four countries, but they are primarily successful in like one country. For example, MoneyPoint is Nigeria, Time Bank is South Africa, and these are the most recent startups that have become unicorns. And you understand that, especially when it comes to scaling, like expanding to new countries, it becomes harder. And so a lot of these unicorns are very successful in just one country. With Time Bank, we even see they expand outside of Africa. Time Bank went to the Philippines and I think Mexico, and not within Africa because the market is very fragmented. And this is the point where you need more favorable policies that make trade easier, that make sending money easier. That's something that we are still yet to get. So hopefully with time, with enough dialogue, we can bring all of the stakeholders needed to make these things happen. And then I think the more we have conversations about this, the more we have success stories that can talk about how they do this would help to inspire more African countries to start to produce some startups. And I mean, some of it can just be from somebody in these countries. For example, you talked about Zambia, and we'll talk about a policy that Zambia is looking to push later on in the podcast. And then that could be a catalyst that now starts to make people more keen on building solutions from these other regions. So those are just some of my thoughts on this.
We still have a lot of work to do as a continent, and I hope that we will see more visionaries come to the table and build what you've always said for common good. So moving forward, something funny, Stripe has launched stable coins to support 100 plus countries, but it has skipped the big four in Africa. It has skipped Nigeria, it has skipped South Africa, Kenya, and Egypt. And the number one reason for this is regulations, which is crazy because we have on this podcast discussed Kenya and Nigeria both working towards the creation of stable coins. And so the question is, did we jump the gun where we have not fixed our policies, we've not fixed our regulations, but we're busy trying to innovate and create stable coins for the country? And the funniest thing is Stripe actually owns a fintech company in Nigeria, and yet it has skipped the country altogether.
When I saw the news, on the one hand, I thought, yeah, this is surprising because you're leaving out the big markets of cryptocurrencies, especially with Nigeria. Nigerians are very conscious of cryptocurrencies. They're constantly trying out things around cryptocurrencies. So it did raise an eyebrow. But on the other hand, I immediately understood why they didn't come to Nigeria, especially because we are still kind of seeing the Binance saga playing out with Nigeria. Even like Coinbase, for example, the other big crypto exchange is still not in Nigeria as well because of regulation. They kind of used a partnership to get into Nigeria, but still, it's not them that are pushing to enter the country. And again, when it comes to cryptocurrencies in Africa, Nigeria is a very big player. And still, you see a lot of these global giants not want to touch Nigeria. So it wasn't surprising. We also know there are challenges in South Africa as well. Kenya is currently working on those policies. So I understand why a big player like this would not want to touch the big four because a lot of the policies for cryptocurrencies and digital assets as a whole are currently either being worked on or still in early stages. And I guess they are still trying to look at the regulatory environments and climates to understand the direction these countries are moving in. Until things are clear there, you don't want to end up like Binance. So I understand.
Yeah, I also think that there's a possibility that the few regulations that we have in place, and I haven't done any research on this, so this is definitely something to look at. Is it possible that the few regulations we have in place are too stringent? There's a question that comes in for me in terms of how the current regulations we have, maybe our tax regimes. Like I know in Kenya, our tax regimes are a problem right now for a lot of companies, and we're seeing a lot of companies thinking about leaving the country because the tax regimes are just insane. So I think there's the part where we do not have enough regulations where they're clear on what is required of them in the country. But there's also the other flip side where the regulations that we do have are extremely unfriendly to business.
You're right about that. Taxes are not a bad thing, but there's something like overtaxing and multiple taxation. If we leave cryptocurrencies for a moment and think about traditional finance, you mentioned that Stripe owns a Nigerian company, Paystack, but you can't still use your Nigerian bank ATM cards to pay for something that maybe there's a pay with Stripe option. So that is telling. When you see things like that, you understand that there are issues that a lot of these big players are just not willing to take a chance on it until these countries work on maybe favorable policies or with the situation with Binance, for example, where you can just wake up and then your executives are just held without warnings or dialogue or anything like that. It doesn't really look good. So we have a lot of work to do. Moving on from cryptocurrencies, Nigeria and Somalia have signed a data protection deal. We have talked about data privacy and data policies, and it's something that we are beginning to see more. Our African countries are now thinking about how do we protect our data, how do we protect our privacy, because we are growing more and more into the digital age. And of course, you know that this AI technology depends on data. So there seems to be a conscious effort within African countries to now create policies to address data privacy and data protection. And I think this is a very good thing.
Yeah, and I have to congratulate whoever is leading your data privacy and security sector in Nigeria, because this is the second deal we're seeing them sign, right? We just saw them sign something with, was it Europe?
Yeah, the UK.
Yeah,
The
the
UK.
UK, yes, on cybersecurity. And then now we're seeing them sign something with Somalia. And I think this will be key, especially when it comes to payments that we want to share across borders. When it comes to money flow, I think this kinds of policies coming together and having memorandums of agreement that link the two countries and create clear policy on how business can be done between the two countries, which is really exciting because Nigeria has been in the market for a long time. Somalia is a relatively new market in the continent, which means that there are a lot of gaps that can be filled by Nigerian startup founders. And so things like this should create bells in a founder's mind to think, how can I take advantage of these policies that are being created between countries and seek a new market, which is what we were just discussing. How can they grow outside of just the Nigerian market? And I think policies like this, where we have similarities, can allow easier business to flow. So congratulations to Nigeria. I think you guys are doing this the right way.
Yeah, I agree. So if you're a startup, you're looking to expand into a new market, it's something that you really need to pay attention to because there are a lot of changes coming across Africa, and it's good to keep an eye out or an ear out, listening to our podcast, for example, to let you know about those opportunities that you may not be aware of. And if you're a first mover, you get all of the advantages. So this is a very good time indeed.
I agree 100%. So, talking about Zambia, which we had earlier mentioned that we would discuss on the podcast today, they are integrating AI into their curriculum, especially for their university students, which is really exciting. And I think this is something that every African country should be thinking about. They have plans that from 2026, all universities will have to offer AI ethics, data science, and prompt engineering modules.
Yeah, this is a very welcome development. We need to think about updating our education curriculum because a lot of what these edtech platforms are trying to do is to modernize the curriculum. They want to also make it easier to access this information. But the government itself has to create these frameworks, these policies that enable the edtech startups, for example, to do less of that work and then focus on maybe innovating around other areas. So this move by the Zambian government to start to integrate AI, of course, we can see AI is everywhere. It's almost hard not to use some form of AI tool these days, and I don't think it's something we should resist. It's definitely going to make us a lot more productive as humans. So it's good to see a country outside of the big four pushing at doing something like this. And I look forward to how they implement this. I mean, Zambia is beginning to pop up a couple of times. So I am keeping an eye out on what's going on there. Maybe there are opportunities for startups, right?
Yeah, I think actually Zambia is a country to have on your radar now. And the Minister of Education has some concerns about how AI will affect the integrity of education. And so these are some of the things that he's emphasizing, that they need to create very strong policy frameworks so that they can ensure that there's responsible use of AI. Every country is thinking about how to ethically use AI. And so being at the forefront of ensuring that even their education is looking at things like ethics in AI is really something big. So yeah, Zambia is definitely a country to look out for in the African market. I think it's coming up really well.
I guess we'll see how this develops. Next up is ARCON versus, I would say, Nigerian internet. So ARCON is the Advertising Regulatory Council of Nigeria, and we've seen in recent times that they have first filed a suit against Meta because they allege that Meta was allowing people to post ads without appropriate vetting and approval. This is on platforms like Facebook and Instagram. A couple of months later, they withdrew the suit because they said they were going to take a different route. Now we have been made aware of the route. So what Acon wants is for advertisers to send every ad to them for approval before they can post on social media. I don't know where to start with this because I think there are a number of issues that can come up from this. But what do you think about this policy of wanting to approve ads? I mean, these are ads. This is not like public statements or press release or something more serious. This is advertising that they want to, first of all, approve, and they also want to charge for that approval as well. So it's a very funny situation.
Yeah, I got really confused when I saw that they want to approve every ad that a content creator has or something of the sort. And I was like, first of all, how many content creators do you have in Nigeria? And if they were to start doing this, do they even have the capacity as a council to approve each of this? And how much time would they take to do it? And then when you start charging people for advertisements, you are driving up their cost of acquisition. Now, if the adverts are coming from outside of the country, I would understand needing to approve advertisements of a certain nature. Maybe if they have something to do with children or substances that are not allowed in the country, I understand needing to approve those kinds of advertisements. But if I am advertising Coca-Cola or I'm advertising Canva for other content creators, why does that need approval? It's a very confusing regulation, to be honest with you. And I'm not sure what the upside is to this regulation, and I'm not sure what the purpose of the regulation is. So I'm very confused by it, to be honest with you, Kelvin. they have tiered fees, and I don't even know that this can work to start with.
Yeah, one of the things I thought about when I saw this was how do you even go about enforcing something like this? Like at scale, people from all over Nigeria posting different ads. I mean, some people are not even in Nigeria posting those ads. How do you go about enforcing this? There seems to be like a revenue generation scheme that every government agency seems to want to do these days, where they believe they should be generating revenue somehow. I don't think it makes sense in this case. Like you said, I'm confused about what are the upsides for this. Some of the defense they have given is with, I guess, misinformation or false advertising. There was a popular Ponzi scheme that went down, I think, a couple of weeks ago or maybe a month ago at this point. Of course, they used social media to advertise this platform. For me, that's the nature of social media. People post about things, and I don't know that this Ponzi scheme was advertising in the sense of creating ads. A lot of this is word of mouth. People bring other people to the platform because that is the nature of a Ponzi scheme. So when you use things like that as the reason for it, or I'm not really sure what other legitimate reason would create a need for a policy like this, you leave people with more questions than answers, and I think that's the case here. In fact, you start to infringe on people's rights, freedom of speech. If I have to submit an ad to you before I can post it, then where is my freedom of speech? That doesn't say anything about freedom of speech. That is encroaching on the constitution. Of course, we also have like a cyber security act that would prosecute people for taking advantage of people online or cyberbullying or anything cyber crimes. So why do we need ARCON to now start approving ads? I just don't understand. There are other policies that already cover the problem they are trying to solve. So why not focus the energy on enforcing those than just again trying to create another bottleneck that is just not needed.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think that what this will end up doing is removing the legs from under content creators. And yeah, I think this is a place for policy, and the way they're going about it is not the right way.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, moving forward, back to your favorite people, Jumia. The leading e-commerce platform, it is expanding its Jumia delivery service to Nigeria. And once it's done with that, it will also expand the Jumia delivery to other key markets, Kenya, Ghana, and Senegal. So when I was looking at this, I saw some causes of concern. One of them being that there's no specific revenue projection or financial impact from these expansions. And obviously, we have been looking at the way that they're doing business and looking forward to seeing them post profits. And obviously, with expansion, there comes with competition from existing logistics companies in those spaces. It also comes with operational challenges when you're scaling. And so the question becomes, is this part of them making profits? Is it part of their projections? Or might it affect their projections? That's where my mind goes. But I have a feeling that this is part of the plan that they have to ramp up, grow, and then see them posting profits as they had projected.
Yeah, it looks like an avenue to create another stream of revenue. I mean, we have talked about it on the podcast where as a startup, you need to find more than one way to create revenue, more than one way to reach users, more than one way to secure your infrastructure. So I think they are just playing on this. They have this large logistics network in Africa and they're trying to open it up to other people. So that way other people are using it, they're paying them, and of course they are getting revenue from this network they already have. So I think it's a positive in that regard. Of course, there are challenges that comes with this. And that's why it looks like they are taking time to scale. They have tested this in Cote d'Ivoire and they like the results they have seen from there. So they are bringing it to Nigeria, their biggest market. and they have plans to gradually expand to other markets. So I think they are going about it the right way. Of course, we know that they are really pushing for profitability. And as a big fan of Jumia, I am hoping this plays out well. For me, I think it's a positive because it opens up another room for revenue for them.
Absolutely. Waiting to see how that goes. Obviously, Nigeria is a big market, so this is a good place to start. Kenya as well is a good market to think about. So let's wait and see how this plays into their projections for profit.
Yeah. Moving over to Kenya, Safaricom is exploring satellite partnerships. I mean, you don't need a seer to tell you this is stemming from the inroads that Starlink has been making recently in Africa, in Kenya particularly. And of course, we have seen the recent partnership between Airtel Africa and Starlink. So Safaricom is looking for a satellite partner to maybe offer competition, or who knows, maybe they find a way to make a partnership with Starlink. I'll be very shocked if that happens because they have almost been attacking Starlink from the get-go. But I mean, if you can't beat them, you might as well join them, right?
Yeah, I feel like this is a knee-jerk reaction. It's not surprised that I think a week or two ago, we discussed Airtel and Starlink inking a deal, and Airtel is like one of the biggest competitors of Safaricom in Kenya. And obviously Starlink has made some serious moves in Kenya. It's right now the 7th largest ISP in the country, and we all know its advantages when it comes to allowing connectivity, especially in rural spaces. So I have a feeling it's not going to be Starlink, because now those are two of Safaricom's biggest enemies together. So I'm waiting to see if that happens, but I have a feeling they're going to look for a different person to come in. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that, and it's a move that was bound to happen. Safaricom owns 36% of the share in the country, and I don't think they want to lose that. So Airtel has been making some serious strides in that space because they are a cheaper option. And so this move of them inking a deal with Starlink definitely would make them a serious contender in the country. So Safaricom has to make moves to ensure that it doesn't start losing its share even more. So I'm waiting to see who they partner with. And also something you said that I'm also waiting to see is the kind of products that they will then come up with as a result of that partnership.
Yeah, I very much like that Starlink and Airtel partnership. I don't know why I don't even use either either brand, but I just like that partnership because I can see opportunities that are there. And so yes, I am very keen on seeing what they come up with.
Yeah, there's definitely a race for connectivity in Africa.
Yeah, I'm happy I'm not in this fight, so I can take the time and watch what happens. Let them cook, like Gen Z will say.
Yeah. And we're ending with something controversial from Nigeria. And I think I'm going to allow you to take over from this because we had some interesting conversation before we started the podcast on what this means for the country and what is happening with a 70% fail. That's like shocking to me based on the numbers that such this exam and the percentage of failure. So I want you to just take it over because I am very interested to learn about it.
All right. Where do I start? um, okay, I guess I can start by saying, hello, Africa. I hope you're doing well today.
We're in the middle of the podcast. My goodness. This is
Oh my
bad.
God. Since I saw this news, since I heard about it, man, I've been watching the conversations going on Twitter. I've not been able to make any comment on it because I keep thinking, how did we get here? But let me just try to unpack what's going on. So in Nigeria, we have an exam called JAMB, Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board. So it's an exam you write when you want to get into the university here in Nigeria. It's a computer-based exam, But for some reason, since inception of this computer-based exam, they don't allow you to see the results immediately after you write. So unlike every other computer-based exam that I know about, as soon as you finish writing the exam, you see the results. But for this exam, you don't see the results immediately. Maybe this has something to do with the initial way the exam was written before the last 10 years or 12 years, I think, when the computer-based exam started. Before then, it used to be paper and pen that you used to write the exam, and then, of course, they collect all the scripts and then take it to, I guess, their headquarters and then mark it, and then you get the results in a couple of weeks. But it's now computer based, so there's no reason why it should not be shown immediately. And I have an issue with that from the get go, because for me, anytime you add an extra step to a process that is not required, you create the opportunity for corruption. You create the opportunity for people to take advantage of the system. And so this is a bottleneck that I feel has its own issues already that I wouldn't really go into. But the current issue is that almost 80% of the people that wrote this exam scored less than 50%. So it's looking like a massive failure. Initially, it was like that. We saw the headlines and people were saying the standards of education are falling, and there were a lot of conversations around that. Then I think there was like a startup founder, an edtech style founder. I can't remember the startup at the moment, but he had worked with this school to train their students through their platform, giving them practice exams and all of that. And the students were well prepared. So when they saw the students have failed, this guy was surprised. The school and parents were calling him. There were issues there. And the guy was like, we know what we built. We know how we practice. So let them go and look at what happened. They went back, did their own findings, and came out with a report that there's no way, something has to have gone wrong somewhere. Maybe a day or two later, JAMB itself came out and said there was a technical glitch that has caused this. And now they are trying to get people to rewrite the exam again. It's just a complete mess for an exam that I don't think is needed in the first place. First of all, as a Nigerian, to get into university, you write about 4 exams. So you write WAEC, which is the West African Examination Council exam. You write NECO, which is the national exam. So these two you write as the final exam when you're finishing secondary school. And then university, you have to write JAM first, which is the national exam that everybody that wants to enter a Nigerian university has to write. You manage to pass this, and then you have to write post UTME, which is the university's exam. So the university you want to enter, you write your UTME exam. And so you have 4 different exams just to get into the university. It doesn't make sense. Of course, you now start to have very messy situations like this, because one exam would have solved all of this, but you just have these different exams, and then you have to combine this one with this one. And it's just a complete mess, really. And so I'm not surprised when I see something like this happen in the first place. Why is the results not shown immediately they finish writing the exam? You keep them for 3 weeks, and then you come out and say 80% of them have failed. And then you come back a couple of days later saying there's a technical glitch. I don't know. That is why I had to say hello, Africa, at the beginning of this.
When I heard the number of exams you guys need to sit just to enter university, I was a bit shocked, because for us it's one and done, right? Whatever you do in your form for your last year of secondary, that's it. That's what takes you to university. But I also think that perhaps there's a fundamental issue with the kind of technology that they're using, because if it's the right tech, as you said, it should give you your marks the minute you're done with the exam. And also the other question is, why do they need to rewrite? Are the answers not stored somewhere? What kind of a technical glitch was this that distorts the answers of the students? It's a bit confusing for me. But I think there's definitely a need to go back to the drawing table and address fundamental issues in the technology that they're using. I think it's really cool that you guys are already using technology to sit your exams, because in Kenya, it's still majorly paper across board, even in universities, especially public universities, people still do their exams on paper. It's not on tech. So it's very interesting that your country has been able to move to a place where things are being done digitally. But I think there's fundamental tech issues that need to be looked at.
Yeah, a lot of fundamental issues in Nigeria. And yeah, we wouldn't be going into that. I just wanted to touch on this and leave it there. Because if we start talking about fundamental issues, we will not be living here. I think we are running out of time. So yeah, we'll call it a day here. Thank you everyone for listening to me talk about jam and other things that we talked about. I look forward to your comments. Please let me know what you think about, especially this jam. I need to know that other people also see fundamental issues with this problem. So do let me know in the comments. And yeah, see you all on the next one. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Tech Tides Africa podcast. Remember, leave a comment or share with your friends. We'll see you next Thursday at the same time and place you get your podcast. Until then, stay well.